Welcome to Athletes OnBalance, where we talk to athletes, coaches, and experts about mental health and sports. This is a stigma-free zone for inner thoughts and outer conversations. We're helping athletes and anyone with mental health challenges perform at their best, on and off the field.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Athletes OnBalance. I'm Dr. Ginger Gilmore. I'm Assistant Athletic Director of Behavioral Health and Wellness at the University of Alabama, and also OnBalance board member. Today, the roles are reversed, and I'm serving as the host of Athletes OnBalance, and Walt Norley joins me as our guest. Walt is the founder and CEO of OnBalance. He's an accomplished entrepreneur who's built successful technology companies throughout his professional career. And launching OnBalance is truly a personal mission for Walt, as he's managed a bipolar disorder for more than 4 decades. He is a former quarterback at the Ohio State University and University of Georgia. So Walt knows firsthand about the mental health challenges that come from being a student athlete. So Walt, I'm grateful for this opportunity. Thank you to be able to serve as your host today. How are you feeling being the one in the guest seat?
It's a unique feeling, and I'm really counting on you to be a great host and ask me a whole bunch of gentle questions.
Okay, well, before we dive into your mental health journey and what you're doing with OnBalance, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are? Take us through your background and what led you to where you are today.
Well, I mean, I've always been into. I was raised to compete, raised to work, raised to be humble. There are a lot of good things that came from my family background, but somehow, and I think that this is part of a lot of people that are out trying to achieve at a high level. I was always very competitive, and because I was competitive, I wanted to be very good as an athlete. I wanted to work hard to be a very good. I always wanted to be, quite candidly, Ginger. I wanted to be, exceptional at what I was doing, and within that, you go through highs and lows because you don't always achieve the expectations that you have on yourself, and sometimes what others have. But the childhood, and then getting into my high school days, I narrowed down from playing really every sport down to football became the one I was the best at, and I was fortunate to get recruited by all these schools and went to these 2 great programs. Unfortunately, because of injuries and so forth, my career did not go as expected. But what happened for me in terms of getting to where I am today, I was determined, to have that not define me. That when I was not going to be, an All-American, All-Conference, or whatever quarterback at Ohio State or Georgia, I was really, when it was over, I was committed to saying, okay, well, you have to go do something that is unique, and you have to figure out what that is. And it didn't happen overnight. I really caught the entrepreneurial bug when I was in I guess I was about 27, 28, and I was very fortunate to have success, in an environmental technology program that I was a partner with 2 other guys with. And I had success, and that, gave me an appetite that this is an interesting world to try to innovate and solve a problem and solutions that help people in the business world, help people in their lives, and that led to, this is OnBalance is my 6th company, and I have, a tremendous passion for, and I'm very fortunate. So within all the journeys I've been through on the mental health side, I'm very fortunate to be here. And I'm very fortunate to have been able to kind of survive the highs and lows, and within that really thrive. And I think part of that is because I have so much passion for doing what I've been doing for a living.
Well, Walt, you've tried to be the best at everything you've done, and that shines through with you. Just knowing you and seeing what you've done with everything that you touch. And I have to say that I think my boss recruited you too at one point. So
Yeah.
But let's get into you're managing your bipolar disorder. You've spent most of your adult life doing that. And like all mental illnesses, this is difficult to navigate. Can you tell the audience what it's like to live with a mental illness?
Well, candidly, it's challenging. It's difficult. It's filled with volatility and a lot of highs and lows. And, it really does back into why I'm doing this, because the thing that was the hardest for me to accept was the diagnosis that I had it. And I fought that for a very long period of time. I did not look at myself that way. I don't think other people, it was in a time where people didn't talk at all about this.
Right.
Certainly back in my college football playing days, and I have no idea whether I went through some lows because of surgeries and injuries and so forth. But when I was first diagnosed with it, I didn't accept it. I literally said to the doctor, I said, and I wasn't arrogant. I was like, look at me, like I thought, it was like some form of leprosy or something. I was like, look at me. You think I have that? And because of that, and I was very concerned about how other people would judge me, and that goes to families and friends and business colleagues. So there was extreme sensitivity, and I think because of that, not acceptance, my journey was longer, and a lot of that had to do with the associated stigma, and people not being educated, and it's a word that's not. I don't mean to say this negatively, but really at that time and place, for my world, everybody was ignorant on the subject. They lack knowledge, lack of education, and I did too. And because they did, I was embarrassed by it. I pushed it under the rug, and unfortunately, when you push it under the rug, it comes back. It isn't a situation that goes away, and it's always with you. And there's, the challenges of sleep. With my stuff, your brain's operating all the time, very fast, and the only thing that really helps that, besides habits, and I'm a creature of habits. So when the habits don't work in terms of when you go to bed and when you get up and your routine and exercise and nutrition and, working a full day and putting it out there, when that doesn't work and you're still going through this cycling situation and having the lows, internally I realized I had something going on. But then you get into medicines, and then, a lot of this world is, because, and it's getting better, as you well know. But again, earlier on, it's just you're kind of a human cocktail. Try this, try that. It's all pure experimental, and you get these terrible side effects, right? And for me, a lot of those side effects were, slowing me down to the point where I couldn't think. I wasn't clear. My mind wasn't as sharp as it was, and when that happens, I go off it.
Sure.
I go off it right away, and it just exasperates the whole process of trying to get to stability. And so, I again was very fortunate. I went through hospitalizations, and when you go through hospitalizations, and some of the places I was hospitalized, they were scary places, right? These weren't all beautiful suburban locations, and you see another side of mental illness. I mean, the extremes that are out there that people that really have no functionality. I saw it, and I, put my arm around these people and, spent, 30-day increments with these people. And because of that, I do feel grateful when I saw that, severity. I feel grateful to really to be here and to have been able to raise a family. To be a partner with a wife, and, on the professional side, to be able to, create companies and grow them and lead them and have relative success. So I think from that perspective, I think I'm fortunate.
What a journey. Can you tell the audience how long ago you were diagnosed?
Well, I was 25, so I think it was 1986. So it was a long time ago, and but that was just the beginning, and I don't know why. I guess there's some chemistry involved in this. The 20s and my 30s were actually my worst years, and in terms of dealing with this. And I had a little bit of a calming of the storm in my 40s, and my 50s were relatively good as well. But it all came down to me to finding the right care. I must have gone through literally a dozen, to plus 18, dozen and a half different doctors. Trust the medicine, people not getting, what kind of I'm going through and all that. So it was a long time, but that goes to, again, why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I mean, it would be a beautiful thing that, based on what we're trying to accomplish at OnBalance, that, we could prevent anybody from going through this for the period of time I went through it. It would be a beautiful thing.
So what you just described was a lifelong journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so affected individuals have to seek help to figure out ways to manage their symptoms so that they can live a fulfilling life. Now, how do you maintain your mental health on a daily basis?
Routine is very big for me. I get up at the same time every day. I get up about 5:15. That's assuming I sleep, but I'm a routine person. I go to bed at the same time. I exercise daily. The exercise is not only good for my body, but it's great for my brain.
Sure.
So eating habits. Really keeping another thing that's really good for me is, and I think this applies to everybody out there, but specific to the athletes that we're working with right now. I think it's just really important to keep busy and have a purpose, and having a sense of purpose and a daily sense of goals and achievement has been very helpful to me.
Was there a breaking point or a time that you were in a really dark place, either personally or business-wise, with your diagnosis? One time more than others?
Yeah, I mean, from the standpoint of being diagnosed, after I was 25, I mean, I think just in the fact that I was hospitalized, there wasn't really a trigger situation. I mean, there wasn't necessarily an environmental situation going on at home or work or anything like that. Maybe it was a culmination of building up from, I really didn't, I tried not to acknowledge the fact that everything I wanted to do athletically was over, and the way it ended. I kind of denied it, and I said, I'm getting back on my feet. I love the game of football, and college football in particular, and I didn't watch any football for 5-6 years. I just said, I'm going on and I'm moving on. That's in my rearview mirror. And, maybe that caught up to me, which created, the first episode that I have that resulted in the hospitalization. But, another moment I remember, which was, a dark moment, and actually it goes to who you just referred to with Coach. I was in one of the places I described, which was not a friendly spot, hospital, and I'm sitting there, kind of can't believe, and it was a Saturday, and I kind of can't believe where I was, and there was a football game on, and it was Michigan State playing Ohio State, and Coach Saban was the coach at Michigan State, and they upset a very high-ranked Ohio State, and I said to the guy, and I was so proud, I was just kind of sitting there, but there was a mixed feelings. I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, look what he just did, and look where I am, right? And the guy next to me, I said, he was watching it, and I said, I know that guy. He recruited me to play at Ohio State, and he's like, yeah, right. And quite frankly, at that point, I was like, I don't know how much you get lower, much lower than that.
Sure.
So,
wow, rock bottom.
Yeah.
So going back to football, when you were playing, you said you had, in some of our conversations before, you let me know about some injuries that you had, some pertaining to the game, and some surgeries. So how did those injuries affect your mental health? And were there any resources at your universities while you were going through the ups and downs of being physically injured that were in place for you to get some help?
So I did have injuries. I had my first back surgery at Ohio State my freshman year in the fall.
Freshman year,
and
serious.
And then I had my career-ending back surgery my junior year at Georgia. And no, I think, again, hindsight 2020. I'm not a big hindsight 2020, but knowing what I know now, based on what you do and your world does, I don't think there's any question that if there was a program in place like you have at Alabama and some other programs, universities, I don't think there's any question that would have helped me. Because you don't know what you don't know, and nobody talks about anything, right? And and again, I go to modern day in terms of goals and aspirations with OnBalance. I mean, part of that is it's not just when you're there at the university and you're trying to play the sport that you're playing and, in the classroom and doing all the things in that present. It's about the educational element that you get out and you take into the real world. And I think I speak for a lot of people from my era that had gone through something similar, and a lot of people do. So I certainly wasn't alone in this space. I think that it would have been an educational program for me, when I got into my 20s and later on. And as much as anything, Ginger, it would have been as much as, kind of accepting that you go through this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. And so I know both universities now have all of these resources in place for the student athlete. Just like you said, there's such a need. And
Right.
injuries happen every day in football. I mean, it's a very violent sport. We've noticed, though, in recent years that more and more of these former athletes are sharing their journeys and their struggles. And so it's encouraging for our sports industry to hear this, and just for society in general to hear their stories. We're trying to reduce the stigma around mental health and seeking resources. Is there anyone that sticks out to you, any particular athlete that shared their mental health journey that you particularly admire more than others?
Well, I mean, I've just listened on some people, top of my head. I mean, I've read the Kevin Love story. There's a football player for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm from Philadelphia, and his name is Lane Johnson, who he's been very public about it, and I have a lot of admiration. He goes around and speaks to it at schools. He does it, in public domains. He's been on podcasts about it. He's been on TV interviews about it, and he's articulate. He goes in depth. He talks about the dark days a little bit, to the world I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of respect for that. Here is, because I'll tell you why. It's kind of like when I'm doing this, why I'm doing this right now, and why I'm doing this whole OnBalance program. It's because that helps everybody else out there. I don't have that effect on people, but he does. He's a star in his world. He's admired from a lot of people within the, Philly Nation, if you will. And he's a big 6'6", 340 pound man, and he's talking about his vulnerabilities, and right. that helps other people, right? That helps other people. If this guy's going through this, that'll help me. The person though, probably in the last X amount of years though, is and I know it's a little bit controversial, but Tiger Woods went through probably the most high profile mental health journey when he got addicted to the opioids, and I've read deeply about it, and I know some people that know him, and I have a lot of admiration how he picked himself up and got himself back together. From what I understand, read and otherwise, he's a better human being for it. He's a better father. He's a better friend, and he's evidently a different person out there, within the PGA Tour. And you want to talk about the culmination of all that journey and learning about yourself and admittance. He goes on and wins the Masters, right? At that stage. So I think, based on, extremes, Tiger would be somebody I really admire for how he went through that and got himself back up.
I really appreciate the stories that we're hearing from athletes in the sports industry and sharing their heartfelt struggles. Again, that's how we've changed how we talk about mental health, is the firsthand accounts. Who, as far as individuals or leaders in the mental health space, other than athletes, who is making a difference to help these athletes, in your opinion?
You mean people specific to athletics?
Yeah, specific to mental health in athletics, but
Yeah.
not necessarily the athlete.
I think
Who's making an
I think
influence?
quite candidly, it's people like yourself. I do. I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of the leadership in the athletic department. So
Hmm.
I'll call out the athletic director. I think in the Power Four large football world, it's the coach, right? So you have that. In other words, they have an appreciation for the ability to have balance between the mind and the body, and
Right.
they have an appreciation for why would you treat a leg or an arm or an ankle any different than what something's going on between the ears. I mean, your most sensitive place on your whole body is your brain, right? So the progressives that understand that at the AD level, as well as again in the bigger conferences with football, and I've seen it with Coach Saban, which is how we know each other, and then you, because at the end of the day, if
Thank you.
there's a belief within that stakeholder ecosystem, then they're bringing in somebody who's very good at what they do to manage this on a daily basis. And for the net of improving care, identifying that sooner than
Mhm.
later with a process like you have in place. And if you identify them sooner, you can get them to recover sooner, right? And you
Right.
can get them back into competition, because your world is getting the person healthy enough to go back and compete again and be in the classroom.
Right. Right. So you can't separate the mental from the physical, and I'm so appreciative of my colleagues in this space, and thank you for mentioning me in that. It makes me feel very good about what we do, and the universities that are adding those staffers and increasing the mental health resources is a wide sweep across the country. So I'm very happy about the way that needle is trending. Um, and because you've been there, what it's like to be a student athlete, and you deeply care about the mental health crisis. You can tell that, through your own journey and then what you're doing now. What do you hope for every student athlete, just concerning this space? Which you mentioned resources, but what is your
I
hope
think
for them?
the word safe comes to mind first. I mean, that they feel safe enough to go get care, that they're in an environment that they don't feel like they're going to be judged negatively as a sign of weakness, and that because of that, they feel safe to go seek care. And as importantly, that there's quality care there, right? And as you well know, there's places where it's taken more seriously, and there are more, and I'll use the word sophisticated resources. People that are highly trained, like yourself and your group, to deal specifically with athletes who they just deal with something that's unique to the other students. There's a pressure, there's a time management. You have social media now that's extremely different than my era. I mean, from that perspective, and trying to make any correlations, I wouldn't want to be, honestly, I wouldn't want to live in this world and what they have to deal with. I can't imagine it, right?
It's tough.
Can't
So
imagine it.
tough. Yeah.
The exposure, and then, I think that probably, this NIL situation is probably, bringing some more pressures on, who's making what, and am I doing enough to compete, with what, a teammate is doing, and, am I marketing myself? I mean, 19, 20-year-olds dealing with that. I mean, it's just, so, I think safe for these people, whether you're a soccer player, a swimmer, a volleyball player, baseball, tennis, it doesn't matter. The ability to feel safe enough to go get care, and then the net is, that there's quality care that's available to them, and it's available to them in a timely way.
Right.
The time availability is really important. I mean, this is beyond athletics. One of the issues are when you're looking for quality care, again, supply and demand, and you need to see somebody on an immediate basis or near immediate basis, and they can't see it for 3 weeks till Wednesday. That doesn't help
Sure.
anybody, right? Being able to say, I need help right now, And getting quality help right now, I think also is something that everybody within your ecosystem has to be very sensitive to.
Right. Such a different world now than when you played and you were struggling with the things that were happening to you. Now we list all of these different nuances and we couldn't even fathom those.
Right.
And here are these young people struggling, and their sport is their respite. Their sport is part of their mental health.
Right.
But then the flip side is that stress can cause a decline in their mental health. So I appreciate your passion for that and being able to see the difference in one generation from the next and what the struggles are. So before we wrap up a great conversation that we've had about your journey and about the big universities that you were at the helm as a quarterback for, tell me a little bit about OnBalance and what sparked your desire to launch this company.
Kind of goes to everything I just mentioned in terms of trying to make a difference in athletes' lives. And I the correlation of, I was a student athlete a long time ago, and it was at a high level, right? But as
Right.
you just mentioned, very, very different dynamics than the current generation. I mean, very. And as I said, I think it's much more extreme. But the world I've played in my professional career, and it parallels. It's people that are high achievers, or are trying to get to a sense of high achievement, and within that expectation is just, it's profound, right? And it's unique. So when I was thinking about, I sold a company back in 2019, and I was thinking about what I was going to do next. The pandemic hit. A lot of people were reaching out about, issues that they were having with spouses or children, et cetera, and the quality of care. So, the light bulb moment kind of went on. And I kind of started saying, well, how do we help the high achievement world? Because that's where a lot of these pressures are. And it moved into athletics because I had familiarity with it. And so what we're trying to accomplish is I'm a data person. I believe that you take data and you create insights, and that intelligence changes behaviors and in most cases improves behaviors. And in the mental health world with athletics, we're bringing in for the first time metrics to provide insights, and the insights lead to proaction. So, the resource team is not there on the reactive, and they're not in the acute phase. They're ahead of things. And the insights that they didn't have before provides that. It moves to trends, and trends moves to predictions, and predictions, if we do this right, moves into preventatives. And wouldn't that be a beautiful thing if we could prevent something tragic from happening, or even from the standpoint of something very severely happening?
So basically, OnBalance uses metrics to help the athlete during their recovery process.
The people who manage the process, giving them insights that they didn't have previously.
So that's a solution to provide better care, in other words, and more efficient care. And you stress the point of needing to see the resource in a timely manner. So you explain basically how OnBalance uses those metrics. What would be your elevator pitch if you jumped on in the Nakatomi Towers on the elevator going up to the Christmas party? What would you give as your elevator pitch for the Athletes OnBalance or the OnBalance platform?
Well, I know that movie reference, just so you know.
It's the best Christmas movie. Come on.
I know, right. And the fact that there's a debate whether it's a Christmas movie, I don't even get, right? To me,
there's no debate.
You watch that every holiday season. So
sure.
The elevator pitches. Again, we bring everything into one place that the care team has to manage, and then we provided a great consent permission-based program that allows the ecosystem that has to manage it more efficiently. And then we bring in data, and that data leads to improved care. It leads to the timing of the care to resolution. It can lead to knowledge of how you reduce the severity level, and again, it's trends. We have AI that comes into the program, and the AI really takes this to the point of you have predictions. And when you have, predictions, you have better outcomes. And what are the outcomes? The outcomes is, can we reduce severity levels? Can we reduce the time somebody's in an illness case? And can we, because of that, get them back into competition and into classrooms sooner?
So you used a great word, an ecosystem, and that's exactly what athletic programs, athletic departments, professional athletic teams, that's exactly what a team is, or an athletic department is an ecosystem.
Right.
And so designing a platform to help manage, navigate, identify, provide a resource to get your team on board as far as providers for, that's a great way to manage an ecosystem. So what would be the risk of not using a platform like this in such an ecosystem?
Well, of course, I'm biased when I say this. I think there's some irresponsibility, because I think there's an obligation for the athletic department, starting with the athletic director and, the team, the ecosystem that we just mentioned. I think it's the responsibility, just as it is to take care of their physical health and their ability to train and be conditioned to perform at their optimization. I think the obligation now, especially with the fact that there's awareness, the fact that there's education out there and there's knowledge, right? I think that they have an obligation to take care of the overall well-being of the student athlete, and part of the overall well-being of the student athlete is their mental behavioral health, right? And
Right.
and then the flip side to that, Ginger, as you know, there's risk mitigation, and it's just part of this world. I mean, when tragedy unfortunately happens, and it is happening, it's happened,
Right.
and it's happening. And I've asked some very well-known athletic directors what keeps them up at night, and they've mentioned this, and that they're going to get a phone call, and we know that phone call is going to be tragic. And so you have very much the human element of that, but you also have the liability element of that, and the liability issues that are going on right now in this country. They're millions and millions and millions of dollars, which is unfortunate to the institution. And let's be honest, just again, from a pure business perspective, it's very bad optics. It's very bad optics for the university and the institution. So
allowing the institution to have a tool to help with the unfortunate circumstances that are going to come, and we all knock on wood and have good wishes that they don't. But you're right, then we can just look in social media and see where some of these cases have happened. So important for the athletic department to have something to help manage and help keep the athletes, number one, safe, but then, provide them the resources, but also that there's that litigious side that we hate to talk about. So wrapping it up, what do you think the future holds for OnBalance?
I'm very optimistic. We've gotten very good feedback. We've generated, Gen 1 is out. We're actually very close to, closing out on Gen 2. We've started to bring in the AI portion of it to do something with the data, where the data comes to you. It's been very good. I mean, we need to get it in more people's hands, and we're working hard to do that. But really, right now, it's about getting it into the right people's hands. And that's the people like your organization, where you're progressive, and even though you're the best at what you do, and I'll give a call out to your football program, which has been the best program for a long time, but you always want to improve. If you really want to look at the people that, whether it's people or it's organizations that end up, being the best at what they do, they're not afraid to say, we can get better. And so working with programs like yourself and others that have a good process and they believe in this, it's about them taking something on that gives them intelligence that they didn't have to improve their program. So that's really the most important thing for us in the near term, is identifying, those organizations, those athletic departments that have a very good process in place, and they want to improve it, and they want to use metrics and insights to do it.
Well, Walt, your story is amazing. Your ability to change narratives in the business world is amazing. You've got great insight, and I think we could do multiple podcasts just talking about your journey with your bipolar disorder diagnosis. I know this was heartfelt and probably not real comfortable for you to talk about it, but think of the people that you've helped by doing so. And there's really more. I mean, there's so much more to your story that I would love to jump on again, and maybe we could dive into some of those different areas. But thank you for just laying it all out on the table for the public. That is an admirable thing to do, and you did it very well today. And
Well,
it was
thank you,
wonderful to
Ginger.
host.
Thank you, Ginger. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it, and you were a great host. I would say this in finale that I'm doing it for all the. It's not comfortable,
Right.
and I would be less than genuine if I said this is easy. But if we're going to help people, if our company is going to help people, and this podcast is going to help people, I have to talk openly about it. And hopefully, it brings some people out, and again, I'll use the word, they feel safe that they can discuss it, and as they go get help for a knee very quickly or their shoulder very quickly, they go get help here very quickly.
Right. Well, you should be proud of all the work that you've done to raise awareness and to destigmatize mental health in sports. Thank you very much. And thanks for letting me ask the questions this time.
Thanks,
for,
Ginger.
for letting go of the wheel. So from Athletes on Balance, thanks to all of our listeners. I want you to stay tuned for upcoming episodes and make sure you follow along on our social channels. So I'm Dr. Ginger Gilmore, and this is Athletes on Balance.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Athletes on Balance. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please follow us on your preferred podcast app to catch our next episode. Join our community by sharing with an athlete, mental health care provider, or coach in your circle.